Hey guys, it's Miki ASMR here, and today I'm going to be reading Inoikawa Toru X Listener. This one is titled Sakurasu. I hope I said that correctly. I'm not quite sure. If I didn't, I'm sorry. And by the way, Sakurasu means a symbol of desperation in terms of love, wanting someone so badly it nearly drains the entirety of one's being, a broken soul with no other half. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right on into the video. Ethereal. YN simply was. She was absolutely, breathtakingly, the physical embodiment of perfection in Oikawa's mind. There was truly no other like her. No single person that could possibly touch the ground she walked upon. There was something about her, something that kept his attention. An unknown variable that surprised him every day, forcing him to attach himself at her hip, the pain in his chest raging on for another storm. He had been diagnosed with Hanahaki at a young age, that being 12. That same age was when he had met YN, a much simpler time, one of soft smiles and sprints through the empty streets of Miyagi. It was a time where he was happy, completely and unequivocally happy. Where he hadn't had to worry about the small, dainty petals stemming from his heart, the petals that had grown over the years, callousing the inner skin of his throat, escaping his body through coughing fits and blood. They'd started off as morsels, leaving barely the size of the tip of, leaves barely the size of the tip of his pinky. At first, it hadn't been a bother. It was well known that the disease was very real, it being the cause of literal heartbreak. But as years went on, the flowers became more and more serious, larger, rougher, light grunts escaping or becoming, loud grunts became gasps for air, desperate inhales for the taste of oxygen through the thick stems and leaves. And though he was in immense pain, Oikawa couldn't imagine leaving his love for YN. She was his rock, the person who gave him stability and comfort. She supported him as she herself were his legs, or as if she herself were his legs. There were two passions in his life, two things that dictated his moves, the direction his compass was led, two entities that could make or break his soul, YN and his own pride. His own pride that had been hiding feelings for her for the past 5 years. The characteristic that had huddled him into his own corner, berated him, abused him, criticized him when all he had to do was speak his confidence or his confession into existence. The confession that he's finally chosen to say now, at his absolute wit's end. "I love you," he breathed out, the blood rushing from his lips, dripping down his chin, leaving droplets on his white sneakers, red encasing his vision, though Oikawa wasn't sure if it was a shade of love or pain. His body collapsed against the wall, his heart pounding hard in his chest as it beats louder and louder. He couldn't tell the sound was drowning out his cries, or YN's hysterical sobs. She was across from him, her knees pulling into her chest, eyes in her palms, tears running down like rivers flowing down the canals of her cheekbones, not overshadowing her beauty, but making it sorrowful rather than enlightened. The aura was dark, a definite break from their usual banter. It wasn't Oikawa's fault. It couldn't possibly be. How was he supposed to know that she herself had suffered from Hanahaki? How was he supposed to know how to react to the news that she felt the same unrequited love that he did? How was he supposed to feel when she retaliated his confession with a confession of her own? That being her feelings buried for his best friend, the best friend that failed to return YN's perfect love. He was a fool. How had he failed to notice the stolen glances, the hidden smiles, the bitter laughs she'd let out whenever Iwa would have a new girlfriend, new lover, new fling? Oikawa was a master of observation. Yet he hadn't been able to observe the most obvious matter of all. He hadn't been able to deduce that YN, his heart, was in love with the man that he'd always wanted to be. "I'm sorry, Toru," she sobbed, specks of scarlet splattering onto her own white blossoms of Prisma Rose covering the hard wooden floor. "I want to love you, I do, but I can't. And I don't think I ever will." The fits grew louder, cries and coughs forcing them into their own isolation. The two single lovers had never felt so alone in their entire lives, although they were merely 3 feet away from each other. 1 step, 1 second was all it took for Oikawa to reach to her, touch her, hold her as she broke down. It was his nature to want to help her, guide her to reach her goal and cheer her on when she had presented, or when she'd presented in her hands. But he couldn't do it. He couldn't help her find her own happiness if it meant that his would die forever. Love was meant to be shared, not selected through selfishness and greed. So instead of sitting by her side, instead of doing the very thing he'd promised he'd do for every second of their lives, Oikawa held back. He refused to mediate the situation, help her ease her pain. His eyes dropped to the floor, the sight of his bloody shoes bringing him disgust and distaste. Red soaked into the soles of his feet, seeping into his skin, feeding the disease he had been cursed with, the disease of love. In the West, primrose would denote the everlasting bond, that of warm, unconditional feelings that would undoubtedly end with a diamond ring. But here, in his lonesome bedroom, the Sakurasu didn't mean any of that. A happily ever after wasn't in their future. The pages in their book had come to an end. The final chapter was upon them. And yet, Oikawa didn't want to turn the page. He didn't want to say goodbye. Perhaps he'd love her forever. Perhaps he'd endure the pain for the entirety of his life, just so he'd have the memory of YN, a memory of the joy that she'd once brought him. YN was his unknown variable, the unexpected thing that he couldn't predict. But the Sakurasu, that was his constant, the blossom that he'd live forever with his stubbornness was imminent. He'd choose the blood, the anguish, the familiar white petals every day if that meant she was still here. No matter how she felt, who she loved, Oikawa would choose her. After all, she was worth it, right? Hey, more Oikawa angst, guys. You know I have to deliver. I feel like my voice is just perfect for Oikawa angst. I don't know, there's something about Oikawa angst that hits in a different way, which is why I read it so much. Wow, that was kind of depressing, guys. I know I hit you guys with so much angst back to back, but it's so fun. You guys can just have a little bit of suffering. It's okay, guys. That's how I be feeling when I'm reading these sad freaking, this one Tsukishima fic I was reading. Yeah, that was depressing, but anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you know every single time I post a video, and also like the video because it does something for the YouTube algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.